Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody can see my screen and hear my voice perfectly fine. Welcome to the Solution Spotlight for the month of February. Today we're talking ShareBase, and I am your presenter, Guy Schrader. I'm the Manager of Sales Engineering here with Naviant. And a couple housekeeping items before we get too far here. Your voice is muted, so if you do need to communicate with me, please use the chat panel that appears on the right-hand side of your screen within the GoToWebinar. Also, you can use the questions panel for any questions that you might have. We'll circle back at the end and leave some time for Q&A here. And please take a few moments to complete the survey that will pop up at the conclusion of this GoToWebinar. So, at a high level, our agenda, we're going to talk, hopefully I can answer some questions for you. What is ShareBase? I know that there's some questions what this technology really is. Why would you need it? We'll actually get into a demo to show you how it actually works and actually how it integrates with the rest of your OnBase system, and answer the question of how much that it costs and leave you some time at the end for some questions and answers. So before we get into this, I just put together a really quick poll. If you can take a moment to go ahead and launch the poll question here. What do you know about ShareBase? Absolutely nothing. I know of it, but don't know a lot about it. I've seen the marketing, but only understand a little bit of it. Researched just relatively well. I'm just looking for some additional information, or you feel like you're a complete expert here, that you might know more than what I know. So if you could just take a moment and answer that question, that would be fabulous. Seems like we have some responses coming in, and it appears at this point in time, most people know of it, but they don't really know a lot about it. Actually, everybody has answered that way at this point in time. So, well, one person knows absolutely nothing. All right, so that really kind of gives me a gauge here. One person just responded that they've researched it well and just looking for some additional tidbits of information. But with the majority of the crowd just knowing a little bit of information, why don't we get moving forward? That helps me understand a little bit better where you are actually coming from. So, what is ShareBase? ShareBase is an enterprise cloud-based file sync and share system. So if you've seen the acronym EFSS around, that is an enterprise file sync and share system. And there's been a number of them on the market for quite some time. So think of the likes of the Dropboxes, Box, Google Drive, OneDrive, so on and so forth. Those are all enterprise, those are all file sync and share systems. But really, I question whether they're truly enterprise, because a lot of them are set up for personal use. They're not really set up from an enterprise perspective that allows you to have corporate control and ownership of that particular system. ShareBase is actually built on top of the Highland Cloud, and for those people that have been around Highland for quite some time, you know that OnBase has a premise-based solution, but they also have the exact same solution built on the Highland Cloud, where OnBase will host that software for you, manage upgrades, manage all the hardware. So it's built on that same Highland Cloud, which really is designed for that content management component. And it's set up nice and securely where none of your data would ever be commingled with any other ShareBase customer's data. And everybody is given a unique encryption key. So even if something did happen, there was absolutely no way that you with a login could ever unencrypt and view any data that came from another customer. So you can see that there's multiple layers of security here. And it's also integrated within your OnBase solution. We'll actually talk about this a little bit further as we get going here. What it really allows you to do is to share that content with other ShareBase users. So each ShareBase implementation, you can set up specific ShareBase users. You really just need to have their email address, and they'll provide a password. And based upon the permissions that you give them for your ShareBase instance, they'll have the ability to go ahead and access libraries, folders, individual files, so on and so forth. So very robust security. So not only can other ShareBase users access that information, if you choose to share some content with those users that don't have a ShareBase account, frankly, anybody in the world, you can do that via an email link. So what that does is that's going to create an email message generated directly from the ShareBase system to those users, those email addresses that you say you want to create that link for, and that creates a URL that will be embedded within the message to that library or that folder or that file. You get to choose. What do you want to share with those users? And there's also security for passwords that go along with that, as well as the ability to go ahead and expire that link at some point in time, whether that's minutes, hours, days, or frankly, never expiring. And we'll see how that works in a few moments also. So just to kind of highlight what we talked about here in a nice little graphic, what you're really doing within ShareBase is sharing your documents in the cloud, whether they come from OnBase or not. It does integrate nicely with your OnBase system, but you can take a document that's never seen the light of day for OnBase and actually put it into ShareBase like any other enterprise file sync and share system. You can access those documents from a variety of different devices, and we'll talk through the interfaces in just a moment here, but it is mobile enabled. It's obviously enabled through a browser. There's no client software that you have to install on your workstation, and you can share that content both to internal users, those users of your ShareBase system, as well as anybody outside of your organization, anybody that has an email address. So what are the different interfaces that are available? I'm just going to highlight these relatively quickly here. First off, any browser, as long as you go to sharebase.com and have a ShareBase account, you can log on in, you can see the email address and the password being prompted there. Once you're in the system, this is actually using my account as an example, you'll see the different files and the folders that you have access to. So it really is a folder structure, and then you can place individual files and you can nest folders underneath that, but you can see some information here when the files were modified most recently. For example, if we go into the shared with all folder, just double click on it, then that's going to go ahead and show me all of those different files that are within that folder that I have permissions to. So there can be granular security on individual files as well as folders that are out there. So if I pick any one of these files whatsoever, like this Naviant brochure, and open it, it will actually open up that file and display it directly within the system. But you can also see there under the actions over on the right hand side that based upon the permissions that have been granted to me for this particular file, I can potentially edit that, I could potentially delete it, I could rename it, download it, so on and so forth. That's where the granular permissions come in. Really high level blush look at ShareBase within the browser. There is also a desktop component to this. So think if you're really a power user of ShareBase, you may very well be dealing with many files going back and forth from your network, from your computer to ShareBase. There's a desktop component of this also that you can install that allows you to, again, authenticate in a very similar fashion. And then you have some options within that ShareBase desktop. For starters, the desktop component is there to allow you to go ahead and edit any content that's stored in ShareBase without, frankly, downloading it, making that edit, and re-uploading that. ShareBase desktop allows you to effectively say, I want to edit something. It will open up that document now locally, but you don't have to say, bring this down locally, and I don't have to push it back up. But you can see here what it actually does is it creates a ShareBase folder within your personal profile where it's going to mirror all of those folders that you have permissions to. And you can see the little blue check mark within there that tells me that those files are within sync. You can choose to set up the system to sync up these files or not. If I go into that share with all, you can see the same files that are up on ShareBase. So that if I add anything locally within these folders, they'll automatically be synced and uploaded into the ShareBase system, and vice versa. If somebody else adds a file into ShareBase up in the cloud, it will actually pull a copy of that down locally, so it will allow you to have a copy of all these files in both different locations. There's also a mobile interface for iPad, iPhone, iOS, I suppose all things said and done, as well as Android. So just using my iPad as an example, I captured some screenshots here, again, similar login security. You can see that the files will appear quite nicely within the different folder structures. Notice if I go into Share with All, it automatically opens up all the files within there. Very similar to what we saw. Look down at the bottom there, you have some controls where you can change that from the nice big thumbnails to more of a list view if you chose to do something like that. And also to be able to pull up something like that MP4, the first one there. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. If I want to actually view the information pertaining to all of the files within this folder structure and some of the security, who is that shared with, because again, I'm now authenticating within ShareBase. I have the ability to go ahead and see who this is all shared with, my different individual users, as well as my groups. But then if I go ahead and select that MP4, it can actually stream that MP4 and start showing that information. So it gives us some great flexibility to go ahead and store these documents, but also view them without downloading all these files to see what they're all about. So relatively briefly, why would you need ShareBase? Well, frankly, if you have content that you need to share with outside parties, again, you could be just sharing this amongst other ShareBase users. So if you're a geographically dispersed organization and really just want a collaboration space rather than individual servers and trying to navigate to different folders, use ShareBase from that perspective. If you want to maintain control of that corporate content, you can do that within ShareBase because you control those user accounts. Once you set them up, obviously that user has access to it, and you can enforce passwords, force changes every so often, make sure that your password links are all enforced. But frankly, when somebody leaves that organization, you can shut down their ShareBase account very, very quickly. That protects your intellectual property that's stored within ShareBase. The user doesn't have that within a personal share somewhere that they're effectively taking your company's intellectual property along with them. So most other file solutions are personal, not corporate, hence you don't really have the capability of locking that down. And this does give us the ability to extend our OnBase solution outside the walls of OnBase itself. So with that, I've left, I got one more. Recap of why ShareBase. You're going to retain your corporate control. Again, you manage all the users, you manage all that storage. It's inherently secure by authenticating the users and again, enforcing those different passwords that go along with it, and it does allow for that interaction with OnBase. So let's just jump into a demo here. I'm going to be using my ShareBase account. Let me just minimize things here so I can see things a little bit better. So I've already authenticated. I've logged in. We've been using this for probably about 9 months now. ShareBase has been out for about a year. So what you can see once I come in here, just to give you a little lay of the land, you can always go back to your home page, which is My Files, relatively quickly. I can show some different notifications. We'll see that where we actually enable that. But if you set up notifications, we would actually see them popping up here. On my left side of the screen are all the different folders and libraries that I have access to. We have some different controls up here. I can change that view if I wanted to, change that from a list to nice little tiles. And on the right-hand side, we're going to see some properties pertaining to whatever has the focus at this point in time. So let me use the example of My Documents here. Everybody's going to have a My Documents folder, and really this is set up by default primarily for your documents that you want to store for yourself. But you can actually share those with additional people also if you chose. It's not really a great practice here. So you can see here's two different files that I have within My Documents. Since I haven't selected a file at this point in time, these details over here are pertinent to My Documents. You can see I created this March 4th of last year. I last modified this yesterday afternoon. I'm the owner. There's two files in here. I'm currently set up to receive any updates if people view this, but I can see that I have not shared this folder with any other ShareBase user. I have not created any links to this folder to share with external users, but I can see the activity here of all the different files and when they were actually viewed and modified. Let me actually open up this document here. And you can see that what it does is it actually renders that document directly within ShareBase here. This is a Word doc that I put together and just uploaded. So some nice things with this. Hyperlinks are enabled with this. I'll actually share this document with you after we're completed this morning, but this gives you some different links where I can go directly out to Naviant's webpage, and I see that the network is relatively slow today to learn some more information about ShareBase, not to focus on that at this point in time. But again, over on the right-hand side, I can see all the details here. I'm receiving updates. I haven't shared this with users. I've got a handful of tags here, so every file that we bring into the system, we can also add tags, which enables this whole search up here. So when I search for something through ShareBase, I'm first off going to find the file names that match, but I'm also going to find the tags that match and take me directly to those documents. You can see there's a section for comments here where I can go ahead and add any comments to allow us to do some collaboration on these files. And again, versions and activities that actually taken place. So I do want to call out here, I have to move my GoToWebinar panel away every once in a while, that I have some different actions here. You can see when I click on these actions, that allows me to do a variety of different things, such as editing, renaming, deleting, replacing, or downloading this file. So let me just highlight the edit here, and I do see the question, and I'll come back to that in just a few moments here, that when I edit, what that is actually doing now is invoking my ShareBase desktop, which is running in my system tray. And you can see that it actually launched Microsoft Word for me that allows me to go ahead and make any modifications. This information may be helpful for you to learn more about ShareBase. All right. I don't want you guys to watch me type all day long, so let me just highlight that. And as I just save that document, it's actually now going to synchronize that document back up to ShareBase, so that in a moment, there we go. We can see my now modified information within that particular file directly within ShareBase. Let me answer that question. Unfortunately, my question panel is so small I can barely see the question here, but let me see if I can get that. Do the comments get added to the document? Is that comment visible within OnBase, i.e. thick Unity web clients, or does it just live within ShareBase? In other words, the comments that we see over on the right-hand side. It actually is only going to live within ShareBase. It isn't going to be bringing any of those comments back into OnBase. It doesn't do anything with notes or anything like that. It truly is 100% within ShareBase. There we go. And I see people already answering. Christian, thank you for answering the questions. There we go. All right. So for me to go ahead and now take this document like this and say, you know what, I want to share this with another ShareBase user. I just click on that tab out and again, move my panel out of the way here. I can go ahead and edit my share users, add users to share this document. And rather than bring up a nice long list, if I know that there's a ShareBase user out there, I'm going to type just Chris, and you can see it automatically selects Chris Krause for me. Once I add him, I can choose what rights that I want to give him. Do I want him to have full control, edit, or just view only rights with the ability to download and or share that link at a later point in time? I'm not going to do that at this point in time. I can do the same thing for groups that we have set up within ShareBase. But let me actually come in here and say, let's share this by a link. I want somebody else outside of ShareBase to be able to access this content. I can add a link here and just walk through this with me. What rights do I want them to have? View or edit, because typically they're not going to be that much of a collaborator. Do I want to allow them to download this document or not? That's just a checkbox. Do I want this link to expire after X number of days, minutes, hours, or specific date, or maybe never? Let me just say, let's go ahead and expire this within 1 day. How do we want them to allow them to have security here? Now, given I can share a link and say there's absolutely no security surrounding this, the drawback to that is that if the user is going to get an email message saying, here's a document that's been shared with you. They could forward that to anybody in the world, and without any password security, they'd be able to get into that. You can do a basic password security along with that, so you have to share what that password is. That's going to be static. Again, if that password is now shared along with that link to everybody, they're going to be able to get into the system. Something that they added more recently is this email secure password function, and I'm just going to show you how that works. Let me just go ahead and send this to myself. Okay, and you can see that a subject comes along with this, and then you can add any optional message. Look at this. And I can create and send that link. Now, ShareBase is actually sending that link for me. So that now when I come back here, I can see that who that link was shared with to Guy Schrader, and I can view that particular recipients list. And let's see how fast the internet is today for sending out an email. There we go. Here's my email. And that's what it looks like when you receive a link to that particular file. Now, again, I'm authenticated to ShareBase right now, but it's going to actually launch another tab for me when I actually click on this. And you can see it's now prompting me for a password. Every time I click that link, it's going to generate another new unique password for me. So I'm going to have to wait just a moment for ShareBase to send me what that password is. I'll just do the nice little basic copy and paste here into my window, and that now gives me access as though I'm an unauthenticated ShareBase user. Again, looking at that most recent version, and you can see based upon my permissions, I don't have the ability to download or anything. I'm just able to view this, and that's it, but I do have some ability to go ahead and see the versions here. All right, so that's sharing by link. I wanted to cover that relatively quickly. Now, back in as myself within ShareBase, I do have the ability to go ahead and create a new folder here. So let me just go ahead and create one here, and we're going to call this my Solution Spotlight for ShareBase. Simple as that to create a folder. I can go ahead and select that folder, and that's where I can go ahead and set up the permissions for my users and my links again. But you can see it's very easy for me to go ahead and say, let's take a file and drag it in here. So let me just size my screen a little bit here and get back to my desktop. And I can just drag and drop, in my case, my PowerPoint presentation up here. And we can see that's uploading relatively quickly. It's a few meg file, and I'll just take the PDF also of this presentation and drag it up there. So to show you that PDF, again, that's going to render relatively quickly for us, quite nicely. If I come back to my Solution Spotlight and show you the PowerPoint, it's going to take a little bit longer to load, but it is actually going to go ahead and render that, not as an editable PowerPoint at this point in time, but it does render that in a view mode within here. Obviously, if I grant permissions to download this or to edit this, then you would actually be using PowerPoint to make those modifications. Let me hold on to the questions just for a few moments here and cover a few other things once I'm in the system here. Your name is always going to appear up here, but you'll have the ability to come in and view your account information, which really gives you the ability to go ahead and change your password or potentially change your name if you wanted to. But also administration functions. If you're set up as a ShareBase administrator, you'll have all these different administrative functions where you can go ahead and get a high-level overview of the status of the system, how many users, documents, how much storage is being consumed, but also come in here to be able to create or edit or delete any of your users, your user groups that you can set up, and then obviously adding user permissions to that, any libraries that you might have created, any security that you have for password policies. Again, you can set the length and the expiration frequency, things like that. This one's for API tokens. I don't want to show anybody my API token, but this is going to be necessary for you to set up ShareBase with your OnBase instance. The system, ShareBase is going to create a unique token for your instance that you'll actually plug into your OnBase system that's going to enable some of these capabilities to synchronize this information. But you can see we have some capabilities for Active Directory Sync here, as well as any details for the deployment. So that's really our quick demo here. Let me come back to the PowerPoint quickly and just show you a few more things, because OnBase and ShareBase will talk together. As I mentioned before, that API token is what enables that, but at a high level, what OnBase and Workflow can do. Workflow is the main cog here. Because think, you get to a point within a workflow process and you're saying, I want to take this document and now share it with some user external to OnBase. You can do that through the workflow. That can create a folder. It can also send a notification to a user, whomever that might be out in the outside world, saying, here's a folder that you have permissions to. Conversely, it can also take that same folder and allow for a user to go ahead and import a file, and that file gets synchronized back into OnBase, probably as a companion document coming through the coming through the OnBase system. So let me just kind of break this down a little bit further. So again, OnBase, we have the ability to extend our workflow outside to ShareBase. Now, this does require an OnBase interaction with ShareBase license, and we'll cover the pricing of that in just a few moments on the pricing slide. But there's a variety of different workflow actions that can be enabled here. For starters, you can say, let's create a ShareBase folder and also monitor that folder for any new documents that might be coming in. So to kind of give you a high-level overview, this, if you're familiar with OnBase Studio, this is the action pane that appears on the right-hand side when I select that Create ShareBase Folder action. And you have a profile that needs to be set up first. That's, again, using that API token to connect to your ShareBase system. But then once you're connected, you can actually look at the different ShareBase libraries that might be out here. That contract management demo is what I'm looking for. Is there a path underneath there that I can either statically say, go to this particular path, or maybe I need to grab that path from a property or create that path, that folder from a property that I have within OnBase. But you can see way down at the bottom, I also have the ability to go ahead and monitor for new documents, whether we're going to add those to workflow or just create a revision of the modified document. That gets us into the indexing tab so that when those documents come back on in this case, I'm going to consider them to be a draft contract, and we're going to go ahead and match up my primary document in workflow today, that contract request number, with that document that comes back in so that that document can be indexed. I also have the ability to set a property to a ShareBase notification link. That allows us to use workflow then and native notifications to send that link of this new folder out to the user. So here's a really good example here where I'm creating this property called SBU link. Again, using that particular folder path, and way down at the bottom, you can start seeing similar things to ShareBase. Are we going to go ahead and expire that link at some point in time? Are we going to allow an upload of those files? So on and so forth. Can take documents in OnBase, in workflow, and add them to ShareBase. So whether we're dealing with the current item or a related item, obviously you have to set up your relationships, but where are we going to drop them? Again, into that similar path, and I can determine what that path might be from the property. But then coming back around and actually cleaning up after ourselves, after we get those documents back, we may very well want to delete that ShareBase folder. You can see relatively simply here which folder we're going to be deleting, again, based upon that property, but maybe we're not going to delete it unless that folder is actually empty. So those are your current workflow actions that work with ShareBase. So to wrap things up here, just so we can get to the Q&A relatively quickly, how much does it cost? Your baseline cost for ShareBase is $100 per month, and that gives you 10 named ShareBase users. Again, when you set up those ShareBase users, you get to determine who that is. You just have to provide their email addresses. They'll set their passwords. Each additional user over 10 is going to be $10 per month. So that is billed on a monthly basis by OnBase. You'd actually get an invoice. So if you start off with 10, it's $100. If after 2 months you're up to 25, you're going to get a bill for $250 per month, and that may bounce up and down every month depending upon whether you're adding or removing ShareBase users. There is that OnBase interaction with ShareBase license that I told you about to enable some of those workflow actions. That's a $5,000 license fee. One time, again, that goes under maintenance like anything else. So to actually get signed up, you either go directly to sharebase.com, and there's the ability to sign up there, or you can contact your Naviant account executive and they'd be more than happy to talk through the different options that are available to you and give you more specific pricing. With that, now we get to the questions. So let me see what we have here. And sometimes this really messes me up. Okay, there we go. Follow-up question. When you disable a user's account for whatever reason, what happens to that account's content, i.e. the document contents? Do we lose those forever, or does it get saved in OnBase as something? Well, natively, it's not going to come back into OnBase. If you delete the account from within ShareBase, it will give you the option to say, all right, I'm deleting Guy's account. Who do I want to reassign all of those folder permissions to? So in that particular case, that new individual that's been assigned has the capability of managing all of that information, whether they want to save those files or whether they want to move them into a different folder. That's really their option at that point in time. Is there an enterprise license for ShareBase? I am not aware of any enterprise licensing for ShareBase at this point in time. It really is that baseline, that 10 users, and then it's $10 for every additional user from that point forward. Maybe Highland will do something in the future, but I don't see that at this point in time. And I believe that's all the questions that we have at this point in time. Let me just finish things off here relatively quickly. What I'm going to do after we're done here, sometime today, I will email all of those people that attended this webinar today a link to that same ShareBase folder that I just created, that Solution Spotlight ShareBase, so that you have the ability to go ahead and interact with ShareBase. I'll include the presentation as well as that supplemental file that we had. I'll give you the ability to view, upload, and download that information, but I am going to expire that in 7 days. So you really have the opportunity to kind of play with it, but do with that what you want. And just wanted to give you also a reminder of upcoming webinars that Naviant is going to be hosting. The next one that's upcoming is called March into OnBase Dashboards Without Madness. March Madness, get it? So anyways, it's going to be focused on OnBase dashboards, the reporting dashboards module, and that's on March 15th at 10 a.m. So I will stick around for a few more minutes here, but thank you so much for taking the time, and I apologize for going over time. Once I got going there, I must have got a little too excited, but I hope that you find some benefit. And again, please think of other topics and add that to the survey at the completion here. I'm always looking for additional suggestions for what topics that you'd like to see covered. With that, thank you so much, and I hope that you have a fabulous balance of Thursday, and if you're in the Wisconsin area, enjoy the incredible weekend weather that's upcoming. Take care.